A long time ago I heard it said, and it was a kind of joke, that you should never make plans. If you don't make plans, it was said, then disaster comes as a complete surprise rather than being preceded by months of anxiety and worry. Well, today we will consider what the Apostle Paul thought about making plans, and so we'll read 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 5 to 9. Now I will come unto you when I shall pass through Macedonia, for I do pass through Macedonia, and it may be that I will abide, yea, and winter with you, that ye may bring me on my journey whithersoever I go. For I will not see you now by the way, but I trust to tarry a while with you, if the Lord permit. But I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost, for a great door and effectual is opened unto me, and there are many adversaries. Paul seems to have had no hesitation about making plans. In these verses, he gives a very clear indication of what he had in mind to do at the time that he wrote this letter. I will come unto you, he writes in verse 5. I shall pass through Macedonia, also in verse 5. I trust to tarry a while with you, in verse 7. And I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost, he writes in verse 8. It's obvious that the apostle had made plans that he was able to talk about. Indeed, Luke wrote about the fruition of these plans. Paul departed for to go into Macedonia. He came into Greece and there abode 3 months. Acts chapter 20, verses 1 to 3. But here is an important thing. In the middle of his plans, Paul also wrote, it may be that I will abide, yea, and winter with you, in verse 6. He was aware that plans could change. To Paul, they were not fixed, immovable objects. But more importantly, right in the middle of these verses we read, if the Lord permit, in verse 7. There were things that Paul wanted to do, but he was very conscious that what the Lord wanted him to do was of far greater importance. Paul made his plans subject to the will of the Lord. Now, earlier in this letter, Paul wrote, I will come to you shortly if the Lord will, chapter 4, verse 19. In relation to the church at Ephesus, he said, I will return again unto you if God will, Acts chapter 18, verse 21. And then in anticipation of a visit to Rome, he wrote, that I may come unto you with joy by the will of God, Romans chapter 15, verse 32. Paul was willing to make plans, but he made them very conscious of the fact that what God had planned was much more important than what he had planned. James underscored the very same point when he wrote, ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. James chapter 4, verse 15. So I want to challenge my own heart, and your heart too. The psalmist wrote about the ungodly that God is not in all his thoughts, Psalm 10, verse 4. But just how much is he in our thoughts and in our plans? Perhaps it is the case that our plans are not worthy of the Lord. Perhaps they do not prioritize things that the Lord prioritizes. Perhaps we are too fixed in our view of what the Lord wants us to do. Perhaps we don't really want the Lord to be interfering with our plans. Paul was open to the Lord changing his own plans because his priority in life was to serve God and to go through the doors that he opened for him. A great door and effectual is opened unto me, he writes in verse 9. So is it my will or God's will? Is it my plans or God's plans? There's really no reason why they shouldn't be the same thing. And they will be if we are directed by what the Lord permits in our lives.